Uh, Whether or not you joined us or not last time, we got through the 8th verse of Zechariah 6. We will be able to finish Zechariah 6 tonight and get into chapter 7. But I did think by way of introduction, it might be helpful to go back and just quickly give a synopsis of what's happening in the first 8 verses or so of the book. So this is Zechariah's last vision of this long night of visions. And this time it's about these chariots coming from between these two bronze mountains. We can go back and read quickly chapter 6, verse 1. Then I turned, raised my eyes, and looked, and behold, 4 chariots were coming from between 2 mountains, and the mountains were mountains of bronze. With the first chariot were red horses. With the second chariot, black horses. With the third chariot, white horses. And with the fourth chariot, dappled horses. Strong steeds. Then I answered and said to the angel who talked with me, "What are these, my Lord?" And the angel answered and said to me, "These are 4 spirits of heaven, who go out from their station before the Lord of all the earth." And we talked last time that we see a correlation here between these 4 chariots and the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse of Revelation. And therefore the red horse would symbolize war and blood, the black horse symbolizing famine, the dappled horse symbolizing disease and pestilence, and the white horse symbolizing conquest. And whereas in the book of Revelation, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, the white horse represents false religion, we talked about here it represents the conquest of God's agents at this time. And we know they're God's agents because they're sent from, how does it word it here? Who go out from their station before the Lord of all of the earth. We won't talk about the mountains this time, but if you want to find out what we learned about them, you can go back and review the last study. But these are horses going out, serving the purpose of sending the judgment of God out on the earth and preparing ultimately for the return of Jesus Christ during the day of the Lord. Picking it back up in, I think we left at verse 6. The one with the black horses is going to the north country. The white are going after them. The dappled are going toward the south country. Then the strong steeds went out, eager to go, that they might walk to and fro throughout the earth. So they did go in, they started off going into a specific direction, several to the north and to the south. And, we talked about that these are talking about directionally from Israel. So north of that would be what will be at the time the king of the north, modern day Babylon, or the beast power, if you will. And then south of there would be the king of the south. It's interesting that it says that the dappled horse goes there, which we think would represent pestilences and plagues. And then we find later in the same book of Zechariah, in Zechariah 14, that if the Egyptians don't come up to celebrate God's Feast of Tabernacles, they'd have a plague of famine brought upon them. But then we learn here in this verse that the horses are walking to and fro throughout the earth. So they were sent in specific directions, but really we think all of them eventually make it through and bring God's judgment to the whole earth. And then Verse 7, then the strong steeds went out, eager to go, that they might walk to and fro throughout the earth. He said, go walk to and fro throughout the earth. So they walked to and fro throughout the earth. And he called to me and spoke to me, saying, see, those who go toward the north country have given rest to my spirit in the north country. And, you know, the final destruction of modern day Babylon, this beast power that will oppose everything godly and holy, will give rest to not only God's spirit, but really to the entire world. And that ultimately, the ultimate fulfillment of that takes place at the return of Jesus Christ. And that sets the stage for everything else that's going to follow in this chapter. If you have a Bible with little titles for the sections, just prior to verse 9, mine says, the command to crown Joshua. So now we'll read, we'll start out just reading verse 9 and 10. It says, then the word of the Lord came to me, saying, rejoice, the gift from the captives, from Hildiah, Tobijah, and Jedaiah, who have come from Babylon, and go the same day and enter the house of Josiah, the son of Zephaniah. So this, we believe, Zechariah wakes up from his night of long visions, and then these visitors come. They were former captives returning to the promised land, Hildiah, Tobijah, Jedaiah, and we believe this was a literal event, that these actual people came and visited Josiah, and these captives again came back from ancient Babylon. A lot of this is a symbol of what will happen in the future, and certainly in the future, the captives of Babylon, prior, those that come through the tribulation, will return to the promised land as well. And commentaries reveal that Josiah, the son of Zephaniah, was a treasury steward. So he would keep track of everything donated for the treasury and make sure it was put in its proper place. So the house that they entered would have been the treasury rooms, as opposed to him inviting into his personal residence. He was inviting them into the treasury rooms, which would have been connected with the temple. And then in verse 11, it says, take the silver and gold, make an elaborate crown, and set it on the head of Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, the high priest. So they have these offerings, the silver and the gold, and they make a very elaborate crown of it. They set it on the head of Josiah. It's easy to read over this and not recognize the significance. So Joshua is the high priest, and they're putting a kingly crown on his head. This has never happened before in history, with the high priest being crowned. As previously discussed, and we won't go through all the reasoning again, but Joshua here foreshadows the ultimate high priest, Jesus Christ. He's a type of the high priest to come, Jesus Christ. Historically, no priest in Israel has ever worn the kingly crown. Kings didn't perform the duties of priests. Although if you remember back to Saul, famously had this incident where he couldn't wait for Samuel to show up, and he wanted to proceed and did proceed with the offering without Samuel being there. And God punished him severely for taking that upon himself, the role of the priest. Even though he was the king, God said that over that he had rejected him as king. And that's when King David obviously was anointed shortly after that. But in the future, the returned Jesus Christ, the Messiah, is most certainly going to fulfill both roles of King of Kings and Lord of Lords, as well as High Priest of the earth. He actually has those roles and titles now, but he's going to be that present King and High Priest in the millennium, which will be very exciting to look forward to. So let's continue on in verse 12. It says, "Then speak to him, saying, Thus says the Lord of hosts, Behold the man whose name is the branch. From his place he shall branch out." I'll stop there, even though I know it's mid-verse. Again, there's that branch, all caps. We've talked about previously that is referring to Jesus Christ. This time we learn that he's going to branch out. I wanted to read a section from Book on the Minor Prophets, which says this about this passage here. It says, Barron's says of this text, this is one of the most remarkable and precious messianic prophecies, and there's no plainer prophetic utterance in the whole Old Testament as to the person of the promised Redeemer, the offices he was to fill, and the mission he was to accomplish. This is one of those prophecies in which nearly every word is important. In the Hebrew text, the prophecy begins with, "Behold the man," the very words Pilate used to present the beaten Christ to the people of Jerusalem, if you remember back to the crucifixion story. On the occasion referred to in Zechariah, it is not the humiliated Christ who is in view, it is Christ triumphant. The next key word is branch. It occurred earlier in Zechariah 3:8, but here its significance is expounded. He will have a small and insignificant beginning, but will in time branch out from his place and dominate the entire world. And we certainly agree and know that Christ is the branch. And we learn here that he's going to branch out. The passage we just read talks about the Messiah branching out, highlighting differences between his first coming when he was recognized as "Behold the man" at his crucifixion, coming as the Lamb of God to take away the sins of the world, contrasting that with his second coming when he's going to branch out from his throne in heaven, come to the earth as the Lion of Judah, as a conquering king, as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, to literally take over the earth, fulfilling the role that many Jews thought he would actually fulfill in the first coming, because they misunderstood the prophecies that he first had to come as the humble servant and the Lamb to take away the sins of the world. But next time he is coming to literally take over rulership of the earth. Let's continue on here. So we stopped midway through 12. "And he shall build the temple of the Lord," it says there at the end of verse 12. Verse 13, "Yes, he shall build the temple of the Lord. He shall bear the glory, and shall sit and rule on his throne. So he shall be a priest on his throne, and the counsel of peace shall be between them both. Now the elaborate crown shall be for a memorial in the temple of the Lord, for Helam, Tobijah, Jediah, and Hen, the son of Zephaniah. Even those from afar shall come and build the temple of the Lord. Then you shall know that the Lord of hosts has sent me to you. And this shall come to pass if you diligently obey the voice of the Lord your God." So a whole lot there. Again, remember this was meant to be, it had a literal fulfillment in the time of Zechariah. It's going to have a future fulfillment. So this crown that they made at the time was literally placed on Joshua's head for a time, and then they took it off and they put it in the temple treasury. And it would be a reminder for them that that crown sitting there of the hope of the coming Messiah. So it would have been placed there in the temple complex. And then people came from afar to continue building on that temple. But it all looked forward to the future. Future when a much more glorious temple is to be completed. Much more glorious than the temple of Zechariah's time. Because in the millennium, the Bible reveals, especially in the book of Ezekiel, it foretells of a future magnificent temple to be built during the millennium that's different in description from any temple that came before, and it's different in description than the New Jerusalem. So we believe it will be a temple built during the millennium. And if you, well, we'll look at a few parts of this, but Ezekiel chapters 48 through, Ezekiel chapter 40 through 48 talks about that coming temple. If you go back to Ezekiel 40, we'll just start off, just read a few brief passages. Ezekiel 40, starting in verse 1, this is the beginning of the description of it. It says, in the 25th year of our captivity, at the beginning of the year, on the 10th day of the month, in the 14th year after the city was captured, on the very same day, the hand of the Lord was upon me, and he took me there. In the visions of God, he took me into the land of Israel and set me on a very high mountain. On it, toward the south, was something like the structure of a city. He took me there, and behold, there was a man whose appearance was like the appearance of bronze. He had a line of flax and a measuring rod in his hand, and he stood in the gateway. And the man said to me, Son of man, look with your eyes and hear with your ears, and fix your mind on everything I show you. For you are brought here so that I might show them to you. Declare to the house of Israel everything that you see. And then he goes on this very long and detailed description of a future temple. Again, we're not going to take time to read a whole lot. The size of the temple that's described, we believe, would be on a plot of about 25 acres, carefully arranged within the complex are courtyards and different buildings of various sizes, many of them which are several stories high. One structure in the middle of the complex we believe is about as tall as a modern day 25-story building. In the surrounding square of the building, there's a large parkland enclosed by a wall defining the outer perimeter of the grounds of the temple. We can look at Ezekiel 43 and look at the time the returning Jesus Christ brings his glory into the temple. Ezekiel 43:1. Afterward he brought me to the gate that faces toward the east. And behold, the glory of the God of Israel came from the way of the east. His voice was like the sound of many waters. The earth shone with his glory. It was like the appearance of the vision which I saw, like the vision which I saw when I came to destroy the city. The visions were like the vision which I saw by the river Kibar, and I fell on my face. And the glory of the Lord came into the temple by the way of the gate which faces toward the east. The Spirit lifted me up and brought me into the inner court, and behold, the glory of the Lord filled the temple. Then I heard him speaking to me from the temple, while a man stood beside me. And he said to me, Son of man, this is the place of my throne, and the place of the soles of my feet, where I will dwell in the midst of the children of Israel forever. No more shall the house of Israel defile my holy name, they nor their kings, by their harlotry or with the carcasses of their kings on their high places. When they set their threshold by my threshold, and their doorpost by my doorpost, with a wall between them and me, they defiled my holy name by the abominations which they committed. Therefore I have consumed them in my anger. Now let them put their harlotry and their carcasses of their kings far away from me, and I will dwell in their midst forever. Son of man, describe the temple to the house of Israel, that they may be ashamed of their iniquities, and let them measure the pattern. And if they are ashamed of all that they have done, make known to them the desire of the temple and its arrangement. It exists, and its exits and its entrances, its entire design, and all its ordinances, all its forms, and all its laws. Write it down in their sight, so that they may keep the whole design and all its ordinances and perform them. This is the law of the temple. The whole area surrounding the mountaintop is most holy. Behold, this is the law of the temple. So Christ came into that temple and he said, this is the place where I will dwell with the children of Israel forever. And he has an interesting name to the city, to the temple complex. You go all the way to the end of Ezekiel 48. The last verse, verse 35. Says, all the way around shall be 18,000 cubits. The returned Zerubbabel figure will be the one to build this temple. Again, back to Zechariah. It says, I will build, let's go back there so I don't misquote it. Zechariah 6. He shall build the temple of the Lord. The he being the returned Messiah. In historical times, in Zechariah, it would have been Zerubbabel. Next, it's going to be the modern day Zerubbabel. And he's the one that inspired the temple to be completed in Zerubbabel's day. And just as people came from afar to build Zerubbabel's temple, they're going to come from afar to build this millennial temple. And it's interesting in the description of it. We won't turn there, but Ezekiel 47 talks about how life-giving water will flow from the temple, from the throne of Jesus Christ. Life-giving water will flow to the east and to the west. To the east will be the Dead Sea, and that life-giving water will bring life. It's called Dead Sea because nothing can live in it because of the high salt content. That's going to be healed. Water's going to flow to the west, and to the west is the Mediterranean Sea, and that's going to be healed of all the destruction caused during the Great Tribulation, in which so much sea life is destroyed. And then it's interesting also in Ezekiel 47, it talks about there'll be trees on either side of the river bearing fruit every month, and that the leaves will be used for medicine. And if that sounds familiar, from the book of Revelation, it likely does, because in the New Jerusalem, there'll be the tree of life outside of the river there, and it will also bear fruit every month. And this is a type of that New Jerusalem that's going to come as well. So exciting stuff. Beyond this physical temple, the branch Jesus Christ will build the spiritual temple of the church as well. And talk about branching out. The church will grow in the time period of the millennium much bigger than it ever was on earth today. And the church will be this magnificent spiritual temple, again, largely encompassing everyone in the entire world as we get further into the millennium. So very, very exciting times. The returned Messiah, Jesus the Christ, will rule the world from both the physical temple, and obviously he'll be the spiritual head, or is the spiritual head of the spiritual temple as well. And he'll rule as both King of Kings, and High Priest. Again, something no physical human has historically done. And then the chapter concludes with a little bit of a warning. Zechariah 6 and verse 15 says, "And this shall come to pass if you diligently obey the voice of the Lord your God." If you diligently obey the voice of the Lord your God. In the time of Zechariah, it was going to be brought to pass if the people continued faithful to God, building the temple and getting that done and turning to Him. In the future, God's future is going to happen whether we're there or not, whether we're ready or not. But if we diligently obey the voice of the Lord, don't turn away from Him, don't fall away, we will be there to see the completion of this magnificent temple in Jerusalem in the future, both the physical temple and that beautiful spiritual body of Christ growing with converted Christians around the world. So very exciting vision of the future there at the end of Zechariah 6. But for now, we'll leave that future vision as we get into chapter 7, because it takes us in a little bit different direction, as we'll see. And let's start off. Let's just read Zechariah chapter 7, verse 1. It says, "Now in the 4th year of King Darius, it came to pass that the word of the Lord came to Zechariah on the 4th day of the 9th month, Chislev." So on the Gregorian calendar we're familiar with, the date is now November, late November of the year 1518 BC. We know this because we're getting close enough now that there's enough historical records that we know the years various kings came into power. And this verse talks about the 4th year of King Darius. We know when he came to power. We know the month. So we know right now we're the equivalent on our calendar, or not our calendar, but the Gregorian calendar. We're now in late November, 518 BC. And we also know, we can remind ourselves where we started the book of Zechariah, in Zechariah 1 and verse 7. Zechariah 1 verse 7 says, "On the 24th day of the 11th month, which is the month Shabbat, in the 2nd year of Darius, the word of the Lord came to Zechariah, the son of Berechiah, the son of Iddo the prophet." So what we find here is in the 2nd year of Darius, all those visions that we covered in chapters 1 through 6 occurred. So now going into chapter 7, we know there's a 2-year break between the end of chapter 6 and chapter 7. There's been a 2-year break. Chapter breaks in the Bible aren't inspired, and sometimes they break into a middle of a theme, but they clearly got it right with this. this 2-year period, and they put a chapter break in there. So about 2 years have passed again since the end of chapter 6, and a lot has gone on in the meantime. We believe, inspired by God, I'm sure. So remember, we have numerous books of the Bible discussing the rebuilding of the temple. So we can gather other facts and other books of the Bible about this time frame. We believe in these intervening years between chapter 6 and chapter 7, a very important decree would have been given by King Darius, whom historians call Darius the Great. And this is an interesting bit of history that the Bible records, so I thought we'd spend some time on what's going on behind the scenes. So you might remember, or might wonder, how do a conquered people get to spend decades building a great temple to the one true God that their captors don't know or don't worship? It's kind of miraculous. Here's a slave people building this very impressive temple, taking decades to do it, getting lots of resources to do it. How does that happen? And I think more than anything, it's by the miracles of God, inspiring the rulers of the day to help them out to fulfill God's plan. So God prophesied that the Lord, Jesus Christ, would come to his temple. And the Lord worked to make sure there was a temple for Jesus Christ to come to during his lifetime. And that wasn't done by the people's might, nor by their power, but by God's Spirit. We learned several chapters back, if you remember. Not that God's Spirit was just doing it all, miraculously, but God was working in events, inspiring different kings to help out and giving the people what they needed, giving them the protection that they needed, giving them the inspiration to keep building. So it wasn't by the people's might or power, but by God's Holy Spirit, which of course is a significant theme of the entire book of Zechariah. Now, about 500 years before all this happened, David would be inspired to write this in Psalm 69. If you go to Psalm 69. Psalm 69 and verse 9 says this: "Because zeal for your house has eaten me up, and the reproaches of those who reproach you have fallen on me." So this is a prophecy where it says, because zeal for your house has eaten me up. So this is written about 500 years before the book of Zechariah. And then, and remember, Zechariah, we're at 518 BC. So then 1,000 years pass. 1,000 years later, people studying God's word recognized this statement for what it was. That it was a prophecy that the returning Messiah would have a great zeal for the house of God. And we can look into its fulfillment in the book of John, chapter 2. John chapter 2, starting in verse 13. Says, "Now the Passover of the Jews was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. And he found in the temple those who sold oxen and sheep and doves and the money changers doing business. When he had made a whip of cords, he drove them all out of the temple with the sheep and the oxen, and poured out the changers' money and overturned the tables. He said to those who sold doves, 'Take these things away. Do not make my Father's house a house of merchandise.' Then his disciples remembered that it was written, back in Psalm 69, which we just read, 'Zeal for your house has eaten me up.'" So God was going to make sure these prophecies were fulfilled. He was going to make sure that the temple was rebuilt. Now let's go back to the book of Ezra. Ezra. Go to Ezra chapter 3. Ezra chapter 3. So the restoration of the temple, the same temple we're talking about in Zechariah, begins in verse 8. It says now, again of Ezra 3:8, now in the second month of the second year of their coming to the house of God at Jerusalem, Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, Jeshua, the son of Jehozadak, and the rest of their brethren, the priests and the Levites, and all those who had come out of captivity to Jerusalem, began work and appointed the Levites from 20 years old and above to oversee the work of the house of the Lord. So they had a period where they made some progress. And then go to verse 12. It says, but many of the priests and the Levites and the heads of the fathers' houses, old men who had seen the first temple, wept with a loud voice when the foundation of this temple was laid before their eyes. Yet many shouted aloud for joy. They continued, so they laid the foundation here. They continued to make progress. But down in chapter 4 and verse 4, this is what it says. Then the people of the land tried to discourage the people of Judah. They troubled them in building. They troubled them in building. They faced resistance and opposition over years, and progress became sporadic. Let's pick it up in chapter 5. Chapter 5, verse 1. It says, then the prophet Haggai, and Zechariah, the son of Iddo, prophesied to the Jews who were in Judah and Jerusalem in the name of God, in the name of the God of Israel, who was over them. So Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and Jeshua, the son of Jehozadak, rose up and began to build the house of God, which is in Jerusalem. The prophets of God were with them, helping them. At the same time, Tataniah, the governor of the region beyond the river, and these names, Shethar-Bozniah, and their companions came to them and spoke thus to them, who has commanded you to build this temple and finish this wall? Then accordingly, we told them in the names of the men who were constructing this building. But the eye of their God was upon their elders of the Jews, so that they could not make them cease till a report could go to Darius. Then a written answer was returned concerning this matter. This is the copy of the letter that Tataniah sent. It says, the governor of the region beyond the river, and Shethar-Bozniah and his companions, the Persians who were in the region beyond the river, to Darius the king. They sent a letter to him, which was written thus, to Darius the king, all peace. Let it be known to the king that we went into the province of Judea to the temple of the great God, which is being built with heavy stones and timbers being laid on its walls, and this work goes on diligently and prospers in their hands. Then we asked those elders and spoke thus to them, who commanded you to build this temple and to finish these walls? We also asked them the names to inform you, that we might write the names of the men who were chief among them. And thus they returned an answer, saying, we are the servants of the God of heaven and earth, and we are rebuilding the temple that was built many years ago, which a great king of Israel built and completed. Talking about Solomon's temple at that time. But because of our fathers provoked the God of heaven to wrath, he gave them into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, the Chaldean, who destroyed this temple and carried away the people to Babylon. Verse 13, however, in the first year of Cyrus, king of Babylon, King Cyrus issued a decree to build the house of God. So then go down to verse 17. Now therefore, if it seems good to the king, let a search be made in the king's treasure house, which is there in Babylon, whether it is so that a decree was issued by King Cyrus to build the house of God at Jerusalem, and let the king send us his pleasure concerning the matter. So people wanted to trouble the building. A new king came into power. People had forgotten, hey, do these people really have authority to do what they're doing? King Darius doesn't know, so he's like, we got to find out, and then we'll give an answer. And that sets the stage for a decree by King Darius, Darius the Great, that we believe happened during this 2-year space between chapters 6 and 7 of Zechariah. So this is the decree that we think would have happened in the intervening time. Ezra chapter 6, verse 1. Then King Darius issued a decree, and a search was made in the archives where the treasures were stored in Babylon, and at Archmatha in the palace that is in the province of Media. A scroll was found, and in it a record was written thus. In the first year of King Cyrus issued a decree concerning the house of God at Jerusalem. Let the house be rebuilt, the place where they offered sacrifices, and let the foundations of it be firmly laid. Its height 60 cubits, and its width 60 cubits, with 3 rows of heavy stones, and 1 row of new timber. Let the expenses be paid from the king's treasury. Also, let the gold and silver articles of the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar took from the temple, which is in Jerusalem, and brought to Babylon, he restored and taken back to the temple, which is in Jerusalem, each to its place, and deposit them in the house of God. Now therefore, Tataniah, governor of the region beyond the river, and Shethar Bosnia, and your companions, the Persians, who are beyond the river, keep yourselves far from there. Let the work of the house of God alone. Let the governors of the Jews and the elders of the Jews build this house of God on its site. Moreover, I issue a decree as to what you shall do for the elders of these Jews, for the building of the house of God. Let the cost be paid from the king's expense, from the taxes of the region beyond the river. This is to be given immediately to these men, so that they are not hindered. Whatever they need, young bulls, rams, lambs from the burnt offerings of the God of heaven, wheat, salt, wine, and oil, according to the request of the priests who are in Jerusalem, let it be given them day by day without fail, that they may offer sacrifices of sweet aroma to the God of heaven and pray for the life of the king and his sons. Also I issue a decree that whoever alters this edict, let a timber be pulled from his house and erected, and let him be hanged on it. Let his house be made a refuge heap because of this. May the God who causes his name to dwell there destroy any king or people who put their hand to alter it or to destroy the house of God, which is in Jerusalem. I, Darius, issue a decree. Let it be done diligently. I find that kind of amazing that here their captive king is telling them, look, whatever the cost, I'm going to help you finish this temple to God. I'm going to open up the treasuries. We're going to help you. And anyone that wants to alter this decree, I'm going to have him hanged. So it's going to put fear into anyone that would oppose you. So that decree, we believe, would have occurred between chapters 6 and 7 of Zechariah during those intervening 2 years. And that really, again, I believe that was God inspired and God working that out. And that sets the stage for this renewed push to get the temple finally complete and done, which is going to happen within a couple years now. So let's do a time check. 7:47. We'll go a little bit further. So with this decree, again, I believe this, inspired by God, the work of rebuilding the temple was really on the move. Now we know from Ezra 6, verse 15. I won't go back there because I already turned back to Zechariah, but if you're still in Ezra, and Ezra 6:15 says that the temple was finished in the 6th year of King Darius. The 6th year of King Darius. We know from Zechariah 7 that we're in the fourth year here. So we're about 2 years from completion of the building of the temple. The nation's been, relatively blessed. We would presume that the people we're seeing bigger harvests, greater wealth, and prosperity in general as the temple, a magnificent temple, certainly not as magnificent as the temple to come, but a temple was being built to which Christ was going to return, and it was getting near the completion time. It was a time of restoration and joy. It's been almost 7 years, not totally 70 years, but almost 70 years since the temple's destruction, and just under 2 years until it will be completed. So that's kind of sets the scene of Zechariah chapter 1. And let's progress to verse 2. It says, when the people sent Sherezer with Regem-Melech and his men to the house of God to pray before the Lord. Verse 3, and asked the priests who were in the house of the Lord of hosts and the prophets, saying, should I weep in the 5th month and fast as I have done for so many years? So what's this all about? Notice it says the people sent Sherezer and with Regem-Melech and his men. You may have a note in your Bible saying that what is translated the people should literally be the word they. So they sent Sherezer and Regem-Melech and his men. A delegation is sent to the temple in Jerusalem to pray and inquire of the priests and the leadership and the prophets, Zechariah and Haggai, about a certain question. They wanted to know if they should continue to weep and fast in the 5th month as they had done for years. So what's this about? Well, on the 9th day of the 5th month, people would mourn and fast, commemorating the destruction of Solomon's temple. This wasn't a fast commanded by God. It wasn't the Day of Atonement. It was a national fast that the people decided to do to commemorate the destruction of Solomon's temple. It was a national fast day, a national, like we have national holidays, just celebrated the 4th of July. They had a national fast day on the 9th day of the 5th month. We're going to find other national fast days as we continue in chapters 7 and 8, which is largely continues the same theme in chapters 7 and 8. So they were asking if they should still keep this up. The question probably arose because they were being blessed again. The temple rebuilding project was coming to an end. It was nearly complete. It's like, should we continue to mourn the destruction of the old temple when the new temple's almost finished here? So they're asking this question, and can you inquire of God, do we need to keep doing these national fasts? They were going to have a new temple to worship at, and they wondered if they still needed to fast over Solomon's temple being destroyed. Let's go to verse 4. It says, then the word of the Lord of hosts came to me, saying, say to all the people of the land and to the priests, when you fasted and mourned in the 5th and 7 months during those 70 years, did you really fast for me? Then he repeats it, for me. When you eat and when you drink, do you not eat and drink for yourselves? Should you not have obeyed the words which the Lord proclaimed throughout the former prophets when Jerusalem and the cities around it were inhabited and prosperous, and the south and the lowland were inhabited? So this is God's response. Notice God also mentions a fast in the 7th month. The 7th month is the month in which we have the Feast of Atonement, but this was not, again, the Feast of Atonement. This was another national feast day. According to the Encyclopedia of the Living Bible, this other fast God referred to would have been the 3rd of Tishri, and the anniversary of the assassination of a man named Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam. So obviously, if they'd have asked, do we need to continue fasting on the Day of Atonement, would have been a blanket yes. But they're asking, do we need to continue to fast on these national feast days? And then God, in his answer, brings up not only the 5th month fast, but this the 7th month fast. And we can go to Jeremiah. If you turn to Jeremiah, we can read about, so the 7th month fast day was to commemorate the assassination of Gedaliah. And that's in Jeremiah chapter 40. Jeremiah chapter 40. We learn that Gedaliah was governor of Judah, and that Jeremiah was sent to him. Then in verse 41, we can read about the assassination in verses 1 and 2. Again, Jeremiah 41, 1 and 2. Now it came to pass in the 7th month that Ishmael, the son of Nathaniah, the son of Elishama, of the royal family, and of the officers of the king, came with 10 men to Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, at Mizpah, and there they ate bread together at Mizpah. Then Ishmael, the son of Nathaniah, and the 10 men who were with him arose and struck Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, with the sword, and killed him, whom the king of Babylon had made governor over Judah. So they commemorated a national day of mourning. They didn't only kill Gedaliah, they killed a delegation sent by the Lord as well. We can continue in verse 3. Ishmael also struck down all the Jews who were with him, that is, with Gedaliah at Mizpah, and the Chaldeans who were found there, the men of war. And it happened on the 2nd day after he had killed Gedaliah, when as yet no one knew it, that certain men came from Shechem, from Shiloh, and from Samaria, 80 men with their beards shaved and their clothes torn, having cut themselves with offerings and incense in the hand, to bring them to the house of the Lord. Verse 6, Now Ishmael, the son of Nathaniah, went out from Mizpah to meet them, weeping as he went along. And it happened as he met them that he said to them, Come to Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam. So it was when they came into the midst of the city that Ishmael, the son of Nathaniah, killed them and cast them into the midst of the pit, he and the men who were with him. These men killed the men of God. Sad story. And so the Jews had set up the Israelites had set up this national day of mourning for Gedaliah in the 7th month. So you have these two national feast days. But again, why they were fasting was a little bit of a a sidebar. It wasn't the most important thing. God gets to the point of the question and asks them a very pointed question. God says, "Did you really fast for me?" And then he repeats it again for effect. For me. That's what he wanted to ask the people. And it's a rhetorical question, because when God has to ask that question, we already know the answer, right? They were fasting with wrong motives. They weren't fasting for God. And I have 7:58, so it's kind of the most natural stopping point we're going to have tonight. But we'll stop there, and then we'll pick it up next time, talking about what fasting is all about, and the kind of fast that God does want, and the kind of fast that God would have been pleased with, and what the people were doing wrong in their fasting. So we're gonna pick that up next time, and hope that was beneficial. Hope you all have a good rest of the week. Looking forward to seeing you on the Sabbath, the ones that I will. To the rest of you, hope you have a wonderful rest of the week and good Sabbath.